testing tech and add a full-time laborer. So the first item we have is 20038 City Hall parking deck change order update. Mr. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. President. You remember last time we spoke, I mentioned how CPS had offered us a change order to move the detention basin to the east side of the lot near Sully's. And we felt we needed more information. It was quite high. They did provide additional information, but it was not enough for us to be on board with it. After discussing internally here, we recommended that we start negotiation with them to non-perform this task with the idea that the city would do it themselves. They owe us a credit because this was a required item. So they're preparing, they've got some money into it. I know they hired an engineer to design it and that kind of stuff. So we requested that they kind of get back to us on what non-performance would mean in terms of a credit to us. We haven't seen it yet, so I don't have information for you tonight, but there's two other items as well. In addition to the detention basin, the canopy, which is between City Hall and the entrance to the parking deck, and the security cameras. Both of those are also required items, so they owe them to us, so to speak. We have discussed change orders for them. The canopy, our Historic Preservation Board asked for some changes. The response from CPS to those changes inflated the price to where we're not comfortable moving forward with it. And the same as the cameras. They owe us cameras. We did change the requirements, requested change the requirements to add more cameras and to utilize a specific brand of camera that our IT department wanted to use. Again, their price back to us for those changes was exorbitant. So I guess to summarize, we're in the negotiation process with them to non-perform all three of those items and to give the city a credit for all three, with the idea that we would then perform those tasks ourselves.
Thank you, Patrick. When you say they're going to non-perform them, does that mean we are going to perform them upon completion of the deck after they're gone? Is that how it works?
Yeah, most likely. This will happen after the fact. The cameras, we can probably get most of that work done simultaneously. The detention basin, we wouldn't be able to. There's just not enough room on site. Plus, we're going to have to go through a bid process for that. So time-wise, we wouldn't be able to get it started before they leave. And the canopy as well. We can do that anytime afterwards with a very minimal effect to the usage.
So what do you need from council? Do you need us to approve the non-performance of those items?
No, at this point, we don't have anything to approve. We're not changing the contract until we get what they're proposing as a credit to us. When we get that information, we'll bring it back to you, and then we'll ask you to change the contract by deducting the value of it. Right now, today we're just giving you an update.
Thank you. Eric Heppinger?
Yes, hi Pat. I'm just curious on, with us doing it ourselves, how much of a savings we're talking about here, and for all the different things we're talking about, and also what's the timeline going to look like? Do we think that everything will be done and ready to be open at the same time because we're doing this ourselves?
Yeah, we would anticipate opening on schedule. I think we discussed this a little bit last meeting. The detention basin would not be done when we opened. It would probably be done in the fall. And when we do that construction, there's probably going to be about 2 weeks of impact where the entrance off of 18 by Sully's would not be able to be used. The garage can be open during that time, but it would only be down to the one entrance off of Elmwood. The cost difference, I think, for the detention basin, they're requesting a $120-some thousand increase, and that's on top of the $50,000 or so credit. I'm quite sure we can get this done for at least half of that amount, but we'll see. The canopy, probably not going to be a big cost savings. Their value of that is $30,000. The upgrade cost that they proposed after the comments by Historic Preservation was like $76,000 or something. I'm sure we can get that done probably for around the $30,000 value if we do want to go forward with it. And the cameras are similar. Their upgrade cost to upgrade to 28 cameras versus the 20 that were required. So adding 8 cameras and then furnishing all 28 cameras with the style that our IT department wanted was like a $56,000 upgrade. Well, we have gotten prices. We think we can do the whole thing around $40,000. So those are the values we have right now.
Paul?
Mr. Coyne.
Wait, Mr. Rose first.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Patrick, with regard to the detention basin holding it off till the fall, what happens should we have another 100-year rain before that's installed?
Well, right now the drainage through the parking deck is through actually a sump pump because the sewer isn't hooked up. We would have to continue that. Yeah, if we got a crazy rain, there's likely that we might have flooding for a couple hours in there. And I think that might be the case either way. The sewers aren't built for a 100-year flood. But in a heavy rain, I'm sure there'll be a puddle or two in there for a short time after the event.
Okay. But nothing that we have to worry a great deal about, hopefully anyway, right?
Correct. Yeah, nothing. We're not overly concerned about that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Hamel?
Thank you, Mr. President. So out of fairness to the council, Patrick, if you could elaborate a little bit, if we close the Liberty Street entrance, that would only permit us to access the upper level. And if that's the case, what spaces would be left versus what would be lost on the lower level?
No, you could get to both levels from either entrance. It's from Elmwood to get to the upper level. You just have to kind of drive around the whole parking deck, but you could access both levels from either entrance.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right, Patrick, keep us informed.
Yes, sir.
2117 Job Creation Grant Agreement, Carlisle Brake and Friction Inc. Mrs. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're bringing this back as the company had made some amendments to the original numbers that they had submitted to us in the application. So the request is for the mayor to enter into a job creation grant agreement with Carlisle Brake and Friction for the purposes of consolidating a portion of their headquarter operations from Solon to Medina. The project entails an office renovation and addition of a mezzanine in the manufacturing portion of the building to accommodate 48 employees at 920 Lake Road facility. They will have a total investment in this project of $1.9 million for those office improvements to the existing facility. Their commitment is to create 48 new full-time positions with new payroll of $5,558,693 to the city of Medina. They are expected to complete this project late in 2020, and the agreement will provide Carlisle Brake and Friction with a grant of up to 40% of new payroll taxes to the city of Medina for 7 years. So if they were to meet that exact number in payroll, their minimum grant payment would be $27,793.47. And as you are aware, we also allow for a maximum of 25% overage. So the maximum they could receive any year would be $34,741.83. The grant agreement has previously been reviewed by the law director, and I did give him a copy of the updates. And again, there was no legal verbiage changes. It was really just these payroll numbers and the actual job numbers, as well as the timeline for the project. As a reminder to council and the public, job creation grants are paid from non-income tax generated revenues, and we respectfully request approval of this grant agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2123 budget amendments. We have 2020-008 reductions in the 527 budget hearing. Keith?
Yes, these are reductions that came from the budget hearing back on May 27th. These you asked that these be reduced, so this is to do that.
Okay. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2020-009 reductions in the 513 budget hearing. I assume these are the reductions we requested to be made at the 513 budget hearing.
That's correct. Move to
Any
approve.
questions? Oh, sorry.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And 2020-010, accept a check from the Miracle League for the Sam Massey Park. Mr. Durham?
This is to appropriate funds that were given to us by the Miracle League for a project they're working on at the Sam Massey Park.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2124, accept technology grant award for the Muni Court. Is there anybody there for the Muni Court?
Yep, I'm here, Mr. President.
All right.
About 2 weeks ago, we received a call from the Supreme Court saying that they had more money available in their technology grant for our servers. So we went ahead and applied, and they approved us for $62,950. The check is on its way, and we're just respectfully asking the council to approve it when it comes.
And what was the matching grant? Was there a matching number to that?
Well, we were approved for $62,950 through the Ohio Supreme Court. The council approved $68,000 for the new servers.
Right, okay. So we just had to come up with $6,000. All right.
Yes, but that's coming out of general fund.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2125, section 125, plan changes. Is this Mr. Durham or?
This is me.
Bye-bye.
There are three changes we're permitted to make. The first is just due to inflation, and that's to increase the rollover in the flexible spending accounts to $550 from $500. The other two changes are related to the COVID issue. One is to allow mid-year cafeteria plan changes. The reason for this is people use this for dependent care, and since a lot of daycares have closed, if you no longer are paying daycare, you no longer need to have the deduction. So we're allowed to authorize people to make mid-year changes, which normally they can't do. And then the final one is to extend the grace period for flexible spending accounts and dependent childcare accounts for the 2019 deductions all the way through the end of 2020. Those two changes are COVID related and they're temporary. They're both only through the end of the year. I mentioned in the RCA because I wanted to have full disclosure. I am impacted by the change on the dependent care because I have that deduction from mine, and the daycare where we're taking Bryson is closed, so we're not spending that money anymore. So I will be making a mid-year change if it's permitted. But I want to make clear that it's not just for me. We have other employees, at least one other employee has asked about making a change due to COVID. And so I think it's beneficial for employees generally and not just for me, but I wanted to let council know that.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Coyne. We did the same for our school employees, so.
Okay. And Mr. Rose?
Oh, yeah, I do have one question with the first one. You said, Keith, you said that it's permitted, the rollover's permitted because of inflation. This is by federal law that you can do that, or what vehicle allows you to do it for inflation?
Right. It's the Fed set up the restrictions on the 125 and they increased it to 550 from 500, but we have to pass this to follow along with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So Keith, do you want the emergency clause so that people can start?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of left that up to you. If it depends on how soon we want to allow people to do this. Did you do it by emergency with the school?
We don't have, we did make it effective right away just so that people could change it sooner rather than later. So.
Okay. I mean, if we want to do the same thing, we'd need the emergency clause.
That makes sense to me.
Me too.
All right. Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, which includes the emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2021 tax budget. Keith?
We don't have a tax budget for you yet. I wanted to get this kind of into the hopper. The tax budget, the primary function of it is the revenue estimate, and I'm going to wait until we get the June income tax, which is what Rita collected in May. They're going to be sending to us. We don't have that yet. We'll have it before the next council meeting, so then I'll be able to do this update, knowing what our income tax looks like at that point.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to 2127, agreement with GIS Group Water Department. Is this, Nino?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. So as the request states, we're asking to enter an agreement with IM GIS Group LLC in the amount of $32,000. This is something that we've been talking about for numerous years, I think back since 2003, the engineering department, service department. As with asset management that we talked about in the budget process, it's mandated by the EPA. So this will include software system updates, asset management support, basically outlining all of our critical infrastructure, assisting our utility locate folks. And the good part is the street department can piggyback on this with our storm sewer infrastructure as well.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2128 transfer request, Fund 168 to Fund 169 Muni Court. Is this, Keith, is this you or the court? Is because
Oh,
it's
this is the court. This is the
it's
court.
okay.
Back when Judge Chase was in office, Nancy and Judge Chase had agreed to use some funds out of the 169 Special Projects Fund. In that judgment entry, Judge Chase kind of outlined how he wanted repayment. I worked with the finance department to confirm how much money has come out of 169 and spoke with Nancy. And we're requesting to have $38,000 transferred from 168 to 169 this year, and the remaining balance to be completed for next year. And that will cover any funds that were paid to the case management system out of 169.
Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2129, amending salaries and benefits code, street department, part-time laborers. Mr. Picoli, is this you?
It is, Mr. President. Thank you. During the Teamster negotiations in early 2020 here in January, both sides, we negotiated the addition of 2 part-time laborers in the street department versus full-time folks. One specifically would be a signs technician, and the other a part-time laborer to assist with the day-to-day duties. So civil service, this was presented to civil service last week, and it was accepted and voted on. The only thing I will add is that depending on the budget in the upcoming weeks with the reduction, we may not fill these positions. We're looking at 29 hours for the 2 positions, and we want to see how the budget fares out before we pull the trigger on that.
We kind of know how the budget's going to fare out. It's going to be 10% less than what you have. So you know the answer. All right, anybody have any questions?
Mr. Picoli? Nino, if we don't fill those jobs right away, is that going to hurt the department, or are we just going to keep running like we are right now?
It will not, Mr. Rose. We have a seasonal laborer who's very well, has great skill sets with respect to the sign machine, and the other duties are just being taken care of from the department. It would just be nice to have the addition of the folks that we're talking about adding.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2130, amend salaries and benefits code, water department, abolish a systems testing tech and add a full-time laborer. Mr. Picoli, you're on again.
Thank you, Mr. President. So similar to the previous request, We talked about this in the teams of negotiations. We have a systems testing technician position that has not been filled for 8 years, has been vacant. So the duties have been taken care of, the daily tasks by operator technicians and other folks in the department. Given that it's been vacant for 8 years, we're confident now, and we like to take our time, that we don't need this position. So in that discussion, we'd like to have a full-time labor, which is a reduction to the budget, and it will assist in the day-to-day duties.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 2122 Lindenwood Lake Dam amended draft legislation. Mr. Patton? Is this you, or is this the mayor, or who is it?
I think I'm going to forward this to Mr. Huber.
All right. Mr. Huber, he deferred his time to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. This legislation is a resolution that directs the owners of the Lindenwood Lake to repair the dam, repair the overflow, and do some dredging to clean the lake. This legislation is different from the legislation presented to Finance Committee 2 weeks ago, primarily in the sense that we are adding the ability that the state statute allows for the city to place a lien on the properties if there's no agreement to assessment. And in addition, the legislation specifically finds that the division of responsibility for the repair is based upon the 14 individuals who use the lake and have ownership of parcels there. So use of the lake is the primary defining factor in terms of how to divide the responsibilities. All individuals equally benefit from the use of the lake, and that is the basis for the division of responsibility. This lake now has been drained and the project's ready to go. The property owners anticipate that they will not be able to pay for the cost themselves, that the city is going to do the work and then recover the monies for the work completed.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Huber?
Mr. President?
Mr. Rose?
Thank you. Mr. Huber, is this going to be divided up by the number of property owners or by the number of parcels? Because I see there are several property owners who have more than one parcel.
That's correct. The division is by the property owners and not the number of parcels. And that's how the people who own this lake have traditionally run their homeowners association. They each equally benefit from use of the lake. They have access. We are not doing this by way of frontage or parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second. I'm sorry, but I do have a question. Jared, is there any questions via the internet for this particular situation for the Lindenwood Lake Dam?
Jared, he's asking you if there's any public comment. I'm sorry. No, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, and I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there anything else that needs to come before finance this evening? And again, our next finance meeting will be at City Hall.
Mr. President, I think this Lindenwood Lake legislation is on for the council meeting tonight. And I think it's being asked to pass by way of emergency, but I could be mistaken.
Yes, it is, I believe.
Yes, it is. So I guess we have to reopen the 21-22 Lindenwood Lake Dam amended draft legislation. Is there a motion to add the emergency clause to the past legislation?
Yes, I move to add the emergency clause.
Second on adding the emergency clause.
Any discussion on adding the emergency clause? All in favor in adding the emergency clause?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Is there anything else? All right, we have about an hour before council. Enjoy the hour break.